Your character arrived in Yharnam from a faraway land, seeking a cure for some unnamed illness. You sign a contract, take blood, and become a hunter of the dream, tasked with ending the spreading scourge of beasts. Like many hunters before you, your consciousness is now bound to the hunter's dream, and you are able to project yourself into the waking world of Yharnam. At the end of the game, the nameless moon presence descends. This is a great one, an elder being that beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. And you're here now asking, why? Well, let me tell you the story up until this point. It all began in the tombs below Yharnam. Once, what we now call Chalice Dungeons contained an entire civilization. It consisted of the Temerians and the Great Ones. The Temerians were a humanoid race, but the Great Ones were far from it.
Okay, first of all, let's see that what are the hunters? Hunters are a group of warriors who are dedicated to keeping their region safe by hunting down beasts. They are armed with a weapon in the right hand and a firearm in the left hand. And these hunters exist throughout the world and are not just exclusive to Yharnam. Yharnam is a towering Gothic city which is the home to the Healing Church and the blood ministrations. Yharnam's whole culture became focused on blood, even to the point of blood-based drinks surpassing alcoholic beverages. Its population is viewed as insane by the whole world, and the natives are really unkind to the outsiders. The most common form of blood sickness is humans slowly turning into wolves. Along with the physical transformation comes a mental degradation, which makes the victims adopt a very hostile nature.
Each Great One is bizarre, unique, and trying to pin down their motivations as a species or individually is fairly futile. The only thing that's clear about them is this: the Great Ones, like any other race, want to reproduce, but for them, it's difficult. Each Great One appears to be truly unique, and since that makes mating impossible, they impregnate their subjects instead. The Ring of Betrothal states that in the age of the Great Ones, certain Temerians were permitted to bear a special child. This union was a blood contract, our first reference to the blood of the Great Ones. Most of these births failed, but some didn't. At some point, the Great Ones ascended. We know this because there are multiple references to some Great Ones being left behind. The Great Ones moved on to the Nightmare Realm, and the Temerians were left alone.
Okay, so he's talking a lot about the Great Ones, so let's understand that. Who are the Great Ones? The Great Ones are basically aliens who are not from this world, and they are powerful enough to be seen as gods. They exist and they influence the world. They are ageless, but they can be killed. Even perceiving them requires a lot of eyes in the brain, aka insight. And the strongest Great One is the Moon Presence, the creator of the nightmare the hunter is trapped within. Now let's understand the Temerian civilization. Temeria was an ancient civilization ruled by Queen Yharnam. It was populated by Temerians, which was a race of people who succeeded in understanding the truth of Great Ones. But eventually they retreated into a deep labyrinth, and their holy chalices were the only remnants left of their ancient rituals.
Destined to watch over the physical remains of the slumbering Great Ones. In time, the Temerian civilization fell to the plague of beasts. Perhaps it was something in the blood. Eventually, a group of Bergenworth scholars stumbled upon this place, and the events of Bloodborne were set into motion. The scholars discovered the old blood of the Great Ones, a miraculous substance that made their dream of evolution a reality. The School of Bergenworth was headed by Master Willem. An ambitious, yet cautious man, Willem desired to ascend to a higher plane of existence, and believed that the knowledge of the Great Ones would lead him there. On the other hand, one of Willem's associates, Lawrence, believed that mankind could ascend through use of the old blood, the blood of the Great Ones. Lawrence seems headstrong and rash, where Willem advised caution. When we inspect the skull after defeating Vicar Amelia, this is the conflict we see.
No, but you will never listen. I tell you, I will not forget our adage.
Lawrence tells Willem he will always fear the old blood, yet he goes on to found the Healing Church, a faith built upon the miraculous old blood.
Okay, now let's see that what is the College of Byrgenwerth. Byrgenwerth College, led by Master Willem, is the main source of knowledge which inspired the teachings of the Healing Church. The scholars of this college discovered the entrance of the labyrinth. This discovery inspired Lawrence and Mikolash, who later became the founders of organizations such as the Healing Church and the School of Mensis. Okay, now let's understand who was Master Willem. Willem is the head of the Byrgenwerth, whose wisdom influenced the teachings of the Healing Church, and everyone is grateful for his contributions. His most important teaching is the motto, "Fear the old blood." He encouraged all of his students to seek enlightenment through other methods except using the old blood. But one of his students, whose name was Lawrence, decided to use the old blood because he believed that it was the key to attain enlightenment. And this offended Master Willem. Lawrence chose a different path to use the old blood for his experiments. He then founded the Healing Church and spread the teachings of the art of blood ministration. Later on, as blood healing became more common among the citizens of Yharnam, some citizens began transforming into beasts, and this made Lawrence regret his decision about using the old blood.
Meanwhile, Willem remains behind at Byrgenwerth and decides to pursue alternate methods to ascension. Lawrence and his church were central to the power in Yharnam. Perhaps they even built the place. Blood ministers doled out the miraculous healing blood to the populace, and the city evolved to reflect that. People came from far and wide, just like you did, for the chance to be healed. The Yharnamites, whose doors you knock on, are quite arrogant and proud, and dislike outsiders. However, after the old blood was introduced into the populace, people began turning into beasts.
You stop right there. Not an inch closer.
In response, the church founded the Hunter's Workshop, with German at its head. German's methods defined beast hunting. He abandoned the notion of armor and dressed instead for speed and agility. With a firearm in one hand and adaptable melee weapon in the other, the forces of the workshop became the city's primary defense against the beastly threat. Perhaps the workshop was even a secret organization, for item descriptions note that they worked under the cover of night.
Now let's see that who is Gehrman. Gehrman redesigned common clothing to provide better defense against the beasts, and also created the burial blade. Basically, his fighting skills influenced the skills of all hunters. Gehrman worked in the workshop until his death, and he was hired by the Healing Church to work there.
And the location of the workshop was certainly difficult to find. In time, the workshop would be abandoned in favor of the black and white church hunters. Perhaps Gehrman's workshop failed in keeping the scourge a secret. Perhaps the church required a more intimidating approach. Whatever the case, the hunters were fighting for something, and it wasn't just to keep the populace safe. Turns out the Hunter's Workshop was just one of 3 branches of the church. The others were the choir and Mikolash's School of Mensis. The choir existed to continue the work that began at Byrgenwerth, namely the pursuit of insight by way of communion with the Great Ones. The choir's work eventually led them to an audience with Abritas, a left-behind Great One. The School of Mensis was, as the name implies, devoted to research and learning, and while item descriptions state that Mensis was allied with the Healing Church, in our adventures it becomes clear that the school is responsible for most of the problems in this world. In Bloodborne, it's difficult to point to a main antagonist, but if I had to, I'd point to Mikolash, who was the head of the School of Mensis. Somehow, Mikolash got his hands on the umbilical cord of a Great One. These cords are very important. For simplicity's sake, think of these umbilical cords as powerful relics that enable contact with the Great Ones. There are 3 of these umbilical cords in-game.
So here Vaati is talking about a lot of things. Everyters, umbilical cords and the choir. Let's understand these things one by one. The choir were the leaders of the healing church, but they were special because they received teachings directly from Ibvitus. Ibvitus is a celestial being who emerged from the depth of the old labyrinth and acted as a source of knowledge to the healing church. Ibvitus convinced them that they could communicate with the great ones and can learn the absolute truth. The choir kept Ibvitus in the labyrinth and continued to work with her in order to learn more about the great ones. The umbilical cord suggests that a great one named Odin impregnates human women under the red moon.
And they are used by 3 of the main characters. One cord was found by Mikolash, head of the School of Mensis. One cord is held by Willem back in Bergenworth, and another cord went to German of the Hunter's Workshop. Mikolash used his cord to perform a great ritual. It ripped a lecture hall of Mensis into the Nightmare Realm so that they could be granted audience with a being named Murgo. It is believed that Murgo is the child of a great one, birthed through Yharnam, the Tumerian queen. There is little known about his power, his origins, or his significance, so just know for now that Mensis wanted audience with Murgo, but that this audience came at a great cost. A note in the village reads, "The Mensis ritual must be stopped, lest we all become beasts." Willem used his cord to, and I quote, "elevate his being and thoughts to those of a great one by lining his brain with eyes." In the lake below him, we come across Rom, the vacuous spider.
Okay, so what is the School of Mensis? The members of this school desperately seek communion with the great ones. They wear a weird cage called the Mensis cage on their heads. The founder of the school was Mikolash, who had telepathic powers, and he could also plant nightmares and illusions into the minds of his victims. Please note that the healing church and this school were enemies of each other.
Many descriptions in-game tell us that this spider hides all manner of rituals. In particular, though, it seems that the spider is holding back the effects of the Mensis ritual. When Rom is gone, a blood moon descends, blurring the line between beast and man. After this event, we find the path to Yahar'gul open, so our character can go through and silence the harrowing cries of Murgo, the infant Great One. The 3rd umbilical cord found its way into German's hands. After his Hunter's Workshop disbanded, German was alone and unimportant. His only companion was this doll, which he appears to have crafted with love and care. Perhaps this doll's creator had wished for such a friend, albeit in vain. His cord reads, "The great ones that inhabit the nightmare are sympathetic in spirit and often answer when called upon." This 3rd cord summoned the moon presence.
Okay, what is the red moon? The red moon is a nightmare revealed after defeating Rom the vacuous spider, who had placed a veil over the world to keep the secret of the true nature of the world from its residents. Let's understand the moon presence. Basically, it is a great one who is also the true founder of the hunt. It used Gehrman as a host to create the hunter's dream. And the dream is a real physical place because you can fetch items from there to the waking world. Almost all hunters visit the hunter's dream at some point in their lives.
A great one which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. Gehrman got what he wanted, a companion and a purpose, but he becomes a puppet, endlessly finding and guiding hunters through the dream and out into the world, assumedly under the influences and desires of the moon presence. So, to recap, Mikolash, whose character is ever ambitious to ascend and become a great one, used his cord to establish contact. He sacrificed his school of Mensis and brought the consequences of that contact upon the world. Willem, ever cautious, used his cord and Rom to mask the effects of that ritual. And Gehrman, lonely and lacking purpose, became a puppet to another Great One named the Moon Presence. He guides hunters through this dream and out into a few select locations. The hunter's dream ends when you successfully hunt down Murgo and his nightmare of Mensis, suggesting that Mensis was the root of the scourge of beasts, and perhaps that the Moon Presence wanted the child of another Great One dead. When you silence Murgo, you return to the workshop on fire. The dream's purpose is fulfilled. You approach Gurman, host of this hunter's dream, and he tells you that he has the power to free you. If you choose this option, you are unbound from the dream. You lived through the hunt and saw the sunrise over Yharnam. If you reject Gurman, the Moon Presence decides it needs another host for its dream. You become captivated by the Moon Presence and pledge to watch over the hunter's dream. But there is a third option, ascension. When the conditions are right for a Great One to be born, the mother and child can be harvested for an umbilical cord. But all Great Ones lose their children and yearn for a surrogate child instead, a replacement. Mikolash, Willem, Gurman, they all found umbilical cords somewhere in the past and used them for their own needs, but ultimately each of them was unsuccessful in the contact that they had with the Great Ones. However, the notes of the Bergenworth scholars contain this information. 3 third cords. Hunt the Great Ones. Hunt the Great Ones. If you consume 3 cords, you can resist becoming the Moon Presence's captive. Instead, you hunt the Moon Presence, and afterward, you become an infant Great One, living inside the dream the Moon Presence conceived. You manage to ascend, as no one else before you did, and you will lift humanity into its next childhood.
Alright, there isn't really much to explain here because Vaati has beautifully explained all the stuff in very simple words. So there's no need for me to say anything extra. So let's wrap up this video here. This was my first time making something like this, so I'm not really good at it. So I would appreciate any criticisms. Alright, this is it for this video and I will see you all in the next video. Take care and bye bye.